Okay, it has been a nightmare trying to get this, at least the first episode, started on this wonderful project that we are trying to make, Shady?
Yeah, the Society of Responsible Men, and yes, men, we are doing this for us. It has been tough, with everything that's happening in the world, especially with men. I feel that we've just deviated so much from the core concept of what a gentleman actually is. Whether it's, people say toxic masculinity, I say weak masculinity, and toxic femininity.
What would be the difference between toxic masculinity and weak masculinity? And then what is it sort of linked to in terms of how do we define toxic feminism?
Toxic feminism, I love that because I had a good discussion with a friend of mine, and he said that a lot of women now are getting surrogate fathers. Now, before, it would always be for same-sex couples to get surrogates. Obviously, they can't produce. But now it's coming to a sense that I can raise a child without a man. And, whenever I go into prison, 9 times out of 10, the convicts that are inside are always kids who don't have father figures, who've never had a positive role model. And I'm a firm believer that, yes, you can grow up in life without a father, per se, because there's always good father figures in the same way there's good maternal figures. Whether it's your teacher, whether it's your pastor, whether it's a police officer, even a neighbor. And I feel that in the 21st century, we have just deviated so much because of inclusivity, diversity, be what you want to be nonsense. Basically woke culture.
Right. So then I need to come to this big question. What is it like living in the 21st century as a man? And I'm leaving this question rather open-ended because today's discussion and topic is we're going to try and define a responsible man. Or at least a responsible gentleman in this, as we're going to try. And are we going to get backlash? I hope not, but more so we're trying to create clarity in some way, shape or form, right? So I've always asked myself this question. In the 21st century, what is a man? What is it like living as a man in the 21st century? Young or old? The rules seem to be changing for men constantly, and sometimes it's hard to keep up. At one stage, we are told, on the one hand, we are told to ensure that the doors are open for women. On the other hand, women say that they can open the doors themselves, but you just have to pay the bill, which is rather interesting in some context. So it's hard to keep up with these things that are sort of expected from men. And if it's not chivalry, it's status, and if it's not status, it's style. What do you think about that?
Well, we'll start with the thing of a woman saying, and not all women like this, but feminism, and I love to ask every feminist this, and whether they get backlash or not, it's not the point. We're allowed to express what we want to say, because I feel that if women can have a voice, so can men. And
right.
Every feminist that I've asked the question to, specifically when you speak about equality within the workplace, my favorite question to ask is, who's Amelia Earhart? And you find that 9 times out of 10, most feminists don't know who she is. So start with that. She was a World War II pilot, celebrated pilot, got shot down, and men celebrate her. The Martin Scorsese's film The Aviator celebrated Amelia Earhart. Not many people, you go out and you speak, now who is she? Oh no, well, we don't know. Now that was a champion for women's rights, for women equality, because she put herself in the trenches. In today's society, when we're going to say, again, let's open up doors. If we're going to level the playing field, then also for men and women, and it's a very controversial topic, but we talk about pay disparity and equality. Why do female porn stars get paid 20 times more than a male porn star?
That's a bit of an interesting question. I wouldn't be able to answer that. Why? Is it because the porn industry is more directed towards the men, and because men that use or visit porn sites are mostly straight, therefore the woman will get paid more than the man.
But in hindsight, if you say that, if we're going to speak like that, let's look at another thing. Larry Flint, Hugh Hefner, these are males, right? Hustler and Playboy. Larry Flint said, okay, let's put a snatch out. Let's put a woman's snatch on. Hugh Hefner went in a different direction. But a Playboy model gets more money than a Playgirl model. And do we say now that that's a discrimination towards men? Because now there's a huge pay disparity between the two. If you look at a model for Revlon, she gets more than a guy that's promoting the same product. Or even your Sports Illustrated or Victoria your lingerie lines.
Like Victoria's Secret?
Yes, models generally get paid more than men. But I've never heard a man, and if I'm sounding sexist, I'm sounding sexist. I'll fall on my sword. Say that there's inequality amongst it. The men tend to take it on the chin.
Well, what does that make us then?
I would say
when I ask that question, are we compliant, or is this our interest?
I think
this the men interest? Do you see males often going into these industries that you speak to, in the modeling industry, the porn industry, the adult industry, or do we consume?
I think it's a thing of consumption, but it's also, these guys know, look, if I'm going to go to do porn, it's the same like a beautiful woman that goes to do porn, it's easy money. Because that chick is going to sit there, she's going to get penetrated by one guy or 10 guys, hence Bonnie Blue. And are we going to say that if Bonnie Blue makes $1 million from film, the supporting act only gets $500? Is it fair if she's banged 1,000 guys? If we're talking about the essence of equality, there's 1,000 dicks. It means each person should get not $1,000, but $1 million each. But that's not the aspect of it.
Okay.
If it was one dick and many vaginas,
it would be the other way around. Is that what you're saying? But again, but society in this context, when it comes to pornography, majority of the people that watch pornography are men.
Yes.
And therefore the woman will get paid more.
Yes.
Right?
But then let's look at sport. Who watches sport more? It's men.
Sure.
So you telling me, we both Formula 1 fans, that any chick, with all due respect, that comes from the F1 Academy should get paid the same amount as Max Verstappen?
Well, that's a thing. No.
You shouldn't. But men don't complain about that pay disparity within your porn sector. Why? Because it's mainly men that go and watch. In the same way, it's sport. If you look at your top industries, construction, for example, it's not a male necessary. It's a male-dominated area because that's where all the physical work is being done. But people don't want to. Again, feminists don't want to look at that. Let a feminist become a bricklayer. How many feminists do you know that are actually sitting being bricklayers? Instead, they're getting their hands manicured.
Not too sure about that one over there. But I think as we digress into that into that field, I think that's a topic that we're going to have to discuss in another one of our podcasts. But today we're going to try and define it. But you made some very good points on there, and I think the one thing that I wanted to touch on with regards to that is, how do men in the 21st century, how do they keep up with society's norms here? Like, because it's changing like the weather in the fall, weather in autumn, right? So I say that whatever teachings we have as a man in the 21st century, we have to remain authentic, disciplined, and active in society as a traditional man. We have fun like men. We journey through life as we were taught as men. we keep our head up high, we keep our accounts sustained, we keep our wardrobes pristine, and we get our work done as per instruction and as per will. What I'm trying to say here is that sometimes there are men that are very, very influenced. They can become very influenced with the changes that come to this world. Again, open the door, don't open the door. Pay for the bill, don't pay for the bill. Say something in relation to the work, to pay disparities, and so forth. Do they want? Should a man change his mindset, or should he remain authentic to his current way of thinking? Should he be disciplined enough to say, okay, if discipline is structure, he needs to wake up in a particular set of time, he needs to get things done. Must he change his coffee, or must he remain authentic as well as disciplined to say that this cannot be changed? And when we say active in society, we're saying he plays his role as a man without any influence from the outside, so to say.
Yeah, because what I felt was, you mentioned the word change. You can change. I always believe there's certain ways you change in life. One of them is business, with all the technology that goes on. But the simple discipline aspect, when you were naughty, your dad would take the belt, beat your ass. That shouldn't change. The thing of Khabib, where I laughed at meme, it says 2-3 years Dagestan and he forgets. Right? That's what we need. We need to enforce that discipline, especially in young men. I was watching a clip the other day, and it was so funny that in the 50s, and this is how badly we've deviated because of the problems that we have now, because physical education was where kids actually were bulk and had six packs, literally. The kids were climbing ropes, climbing over walls, that kind of physical activity. Over the years, they've gotten soft. And we need to keep that strong mindset and a strong mentality. So in terms of discipline, it should never change. The father is the disciplinarian, and the mother is always the comforter.
So when we say disciplinarian, it's not necessarily that the father is trying to hurt the child, but it's trying to enforce a set of structure and rules that are important for the child to function in society going forward. And my thing is that with the changes that have been demanded of men in the 21st century, it creates the struggle to remain authentic, or it creates the struggle to try to continue living that way that you were taught to be disciplined over a period of time. And I think that whenever it comes to a matter of when a person, or when a man in particular, is conflicted, their confidence dwindles. And I'd like to start my definition by saying that a confident man needs no introduction. He is known before he walks through a door. A dangerous man needs no introduction. He is known before he walks through the door. And I believe that when I talk about confidence and dangerous, I mean it in the same way. To see it in the sense that if a man is confident, he cannot be defeated easily, and therefore it makes him dangerous. It doesn't matter in which arena you're talking about. You can talk about a confident man in a place of work, or in a game of chess. That's what I think. It's linked in that way. So a man who treats his woman right needs no questioning, because he is silent and therefore loyal. A man with wealth need not parade his money, because he can afford anything without want. And a man who wants for nothing spends wisely, eats happily, and lives happily with his partner. Or if he's a family man, lives happily with his family, excuse me. He doesn't need societal spotlight, or he does not need societal desire. He does not need to be desired by society. And in that case over there, I would say that a man who cannot be tempted by society, by societal demands, and by societal desire is a confident and dangerous man. What are your thoughts about that?
You know, that's so true, because I think if you had a time machine now, and if you took a World War II veteran that just came back from the war, let's use that now as an example, and that man has been frozen in time and comes to see the society of men that we have today, that man will be spinning in his grave. That man will be not spinning in his grave, he'll be alive obviously, but he'll be pulling his hair out.
It would be more like a culture shock, indeed, yes.
Yeah, it's a culture shock, because where was it that, again, people went against their will sometimes within wars, but also there was a lack of, how can I put it now? Today we have that lack of clarity. You have to change with the times. You have to, it's okay for your daughter to sleep in the same bed as a boyfriend in the parents' house. It's not. Right? That discipline factor isn't there. And people say, oh no, times are changing, you need to change. When it comes to being responsible, when it comes to being specifically a responsible man, that stuff shouldn't be there. I mean, a nice example is if you look at what China's done. China have created TikTok. What have the Chinese done? They limit the hours of TikTok for kids from 10 in the evening till 8 o'clock the following morning. The irony is those kids don't go on TikTok from 8 o'clock in the morning because they're in school until 4:30. By the time they get home, again, there's a routine. But what have we done as parents? It's so convenient as a father to give the child a phone and say, play with my phone for X amount of hours. Instead of, as a father, taking the initiative, going outside and saying to your son, let us strip the bicycle apart, then you learn.
Okay, so I think that comes down to the point of, is the man confident enough to confront his child in a society where men are deemed to be villainous in some way towards their kids? Like you said, disciplinarian initially, right? And I say a man who's disciplined is a confident man who's dangerous. And would it be safe to say that a man in the instance of not being able to show his son how to strip a bicycle down and put it back together is not a confident man, and therefore he is not dangerous enough to be respected by his family, let alone society?
Well, I think if you let your kids walk all over you, then you're not a confident man.
Right.
And in this aspect, again, teaching your kid, go in, learn how to strip a bicycle. That's a fundamental thing. You're teaching your kid a skill. Right? Don't sit in front of that phone. Or take your kid outside, kick a football with them, play cricket, whatever. Let the kid learn how to do outdoor activities. A lot of the time, it's become a convenience now. It's not the old school way of thinking. Because what? Do you think that the founding fathers of all countries were sitting and playing on their phones? No. They were responsible because they had a duty to look after millions of people. And today, again, you know, people give him a lot of flack for it. But when you look at Donald Trump, yes, there's things that I like about him, there's things I don't like about him. But the slogan, "Make America Great Again," that slogan is not necessarily only for the American people, but mainly for the American men.
How so?
Let's look at how woke everything's gotten. Gender dysphoria, right? Yes, fathers have had kids that have come out of the closet. Fair play to that. But now you identifying as a two-spirited penguin, or you're identifying as they, them, he, her, whatever, right? Your pronouns. No, there's a man and there's a woman, and that's on the onus of the father to sit back and instill the discipline in the child. If the kid is gay, fine, fair enough. Live your life. Be that person. Still love your child, but do it. But discipline your child in love. But as soon as you start allowing your child to dress up, have gender reassignment surgery, then you're not a father. Then you're a weak individual. If a kid wants to get emancipated from the parents, you as a parent have to fight that. You can't say to the child, "I'm going to give you your way." No.
So therefore, a confident man with his child, in a confident man who is dangerous in this essence, is still able to instill certain discipline, certain structure in a child's life, irrespective of their association, whether they're straight, whether they're gay, whether they are two-spirited penguin. Is that what we're saying?
Well, could you imagine going to your father, or me going to my father and saying that?
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine it? Your dad would have blown a head gasket.
I think my father would call me delusional and send me into a psych ward. What about your dad?
Dagestan.
Okay. It's more so along the lines of, let's try and educate our kids on what is a responsible person. I'd like to talk about this in the context of at least psychology. At some point when we are kids, we usually associate ourselves with very different characters as we grow up. So sometimes we associate ourselves with being comic book characters, for example. So if you attach to Batman, you would most likely see yourself as Bruce Wayne, ergo Batman. If you attach yourself to the character Spider-Man, you would want to be Peter Parker, ergo Spider-Man, and you would enact and play in those particular positions, including animals as well. So if you come to a point where you associate yourself to, if you watched a movie if you watched the movie Anaconda at a very young age, you would most likely try to associate yourself with the character, the snake.
Oh, the snake, yeah.
Right? And therefore you would identify yourself and play as a snake. Those kind of things I would say is absolutely normal, but if you're taking it to society and identifying it as that, we have a problem in that essence. But as a responsible man, let alone whether you're a responsible man in society that notices this and sees it, or whether you are the father who is a responsible man, you have to ensure or show them, you have to show them the door to say that this is a character that you play, this is not the reality that you live. And that's the responsible man part, is that even if you're walking past and you're seeing this child trying to slither with hands and legs, it is your responsibility as a man, confident enough to go up to the child and have a conversation to say, is it appropriate?
Because also when you look at like a gentleman, for example, and I'm glad you brought up the example of Batman and Peter Parker. Obviously, both their parents died at a young age. But what I saw was everybody gives Alfred. They say Alfred's the gentleman. But it was actually Jim Gordon that was always consulting. Because again, keeping the light from the dark, a responsible gentleman or a good man doesn't necessarily let his kids see the dark. And that's where, Jim Gordon comes in and you'll say to Batman, okay, you go into the dark, you will go in, sort everything out, and then I'll bring everything to light.
Right.
So there is a yin and yang effect to it. Unfortunately, we do have to wear masks.
Contextually, sometimes we do have to wear masks.
And things that happen, we don't want our children and our grandchildren, whatever, to see that. But sometimes I've always felt that when you've been hit with hardship, sometimes it's good for a person to see that.
Okay, and I think that builds confidence as well as we come to the point of, I think through hardship we also build a level of respect towards certain things. Now, I have a thing where I say that a male figure who shows no respect, responsibility, and lies to his partner is a weak man. A male figure who shows this type of weakness is therefore unattractive, despite being physically attractive. A male figure who exists without strong traditional beliefs and routine may be a man in a biological sense and appearance sense, but he is weak for not being mindful, sure, and ready for what he is about to be thrown at them. They go. So if men are responsible to deal with things in the darkness, for instance, I say they will learn some level of respect for things that happen in the light.
Yeah.
But if men are unable to uphold that responsibility in the darkness, they will never learn the respect, and therefore will be weak men, and therefore will not be able to survive a traditional man in the sense.
Because the one thing I've always learned is what makes a strong individual, right? Male and female. But we'll focus mainly on the male on the male side. Is your testimony, right? From the times when things were dark, right? And I'm not saying that one thing about men, we help each other. Our kryptonite is we don't speak about the actual things that are on our minds, right? Whether we wired that way or whether it is a societal norm that men don't speak out.
There is pretty much a thing that I said once upon a time in one of my talks with regards to the conversations of men. And it was, men don't need to speak about something if they know that things are working the way it should. So for example, if a man comes home and he sees that his kids are playing, he sees that his wife is greeting him, table is set, they're having a wonderful conversation around the round table after dinner, or a square table around the dinner table, and they're having this free-flowing conversation about it may not be an in-depth one, or it may be an in-depth one. This is a award for the man. He does not need to say, I need some level of appeasement, validation that I am working twice as hard. He comes home and he sees it, and if he sees this brightness in the home, he will not have to ask for appreciation in the sense. That is enough.
Because again, you mentioned traditionalism. Now I know women want careers, men want careers, and we can't step away from that. But as you said, now the father comes home. He wants to come home to a nice house, to bright lights, happy family. Because let's face it, we all endure shit over the course of a day. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I said, regardless of the gender of the CEO, at the end of the day, when that person still goes home, there's still a father, there's still a mother, there's still a husband, there's still a wife.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
Yes.
And again, I feel that with what makes us responsible is also when you use the word gentleman. There's a gentle part to it. You got the man aspect and you got the gentle aspect. And looking at a gentleman, I'd always have to say that it's you gotta show things such as love. We start with that. It's an emotional aspect of it. Mercy.
Okay.
Because if you don't show love and mercy to anybody, if a child is naughty and knocks over the cup, you can't hit the child for knocking over the cup. That's an irresponsible gentleman or irresponsible man. If he comes and says, listen, you got to be more careful in the house. These things are expensive, and next time I will take it out of your allowance. Now you're not threatening the child. You are measuring it in love.
Okay.
Now a lot of the time in today's society with men, because things are so difficult, the child goes and innocently breaks something. Instead of saying, listen, this is what happened, you shouldn't be doing it like this. That stuff costs money. Who's going to pay for that?
All right, so what you're saying, that a responsible man who has respect for everything, who's dangerous as well, would be a bit more compassionate.
Yes.
And will be able to show mercy. So if you're looking at the example again of a child who breaks a cup, a responsible man who is confident and dangerous would go up to the child and say, you know what, let's try and be a bit more careful. We may not necessarily speak about the expense of it, but he would try to implement some sort of consequence to it as well. Okay. I do believe that in some way that a man who is merciful is a dangerously confident man, and therefore a gentleman.
Because the danger will come in is, hey, if I break something again, my father's going to take it out of my allowance.
I think the other thing that I wanted to touch on in that essence over there and over there is that I think the breaking of a cup is something unexpected, right? And therefore I would say that a strong, confident and dangerous man or men are ready for the unexpected. They are respectful and therefore respected as well. So in the example that you make, if a responsible man had to sit with his child and compassionately discuss and let them know that breaking a glass or a cup is not a good thing. Be more careful. Mistakes will happen. I think he will become respected in the eyes of the child.
But also in the eyes of their workers. I think that also when we as responsible men, we can't only be good fathers. You have to also, within society, you have to be kind to even your workers. Mistakes happen. Unfortunately, disciplinary procedures happen. But when you also go to that worker and you show them empathy, if that's the right word to use.
Let's use compassion.
Yeah, let's use compassion, yeah. So use compassion and you say, listen, okay, you've made a mistake. This is where you've gone wrong. And this is how we're gonna resolve it, right? Then it's a way of constructive criticism. And I feel a lot of the time today, because men have become this woke society, and you can't say certain things because you're going to get cancelled, you have to force a certain narrative. Constructive criticism is one of the things that men have lost.
I think a weak man who is not confident and therefore
can't take constructive criticism.
Yes, I think a weak man who is not confident, who is therefore not dangerous, and therefore does not show any type of respect, will never take anything as constructive criticism, but rather will be taking it as an attack on their personality, the attack on their behavior, an attack on themselves as a whole. And instead they would react rather than act in a way that is according. So for example, if you're talking about a man who is able to take constructive criticism, he will go on to do better, or whereas a person who is unable to would blame the other individual for just not liking them, for example.
Yeah, society norms. And I actually saw it, and this is what I miss a lot now, is even when you watch sport, and a nice example is, I was watching the Ashes, and Nasser Hussain went to Brendan McCullum, the English cricket coach, and said, England were not good. Are you going to change the style of play? And instead of McCullum taking stock over what Hussain has said, I mean, Nasser Hussain is a former England captain, McCullum's response was, his reaction was, oh, that's a really offensive thing to say. Right. And I'm thinking to myself, that's on live TV. That you're getting offended when someone criticizes you. It's not to criticize to say you're a moron. It's criticism to say, listen, maybe you need to change certain things or certain ways you look at things. Change your perspective. Change your mindset.
Right.
And I feel that even when we're like with gym culture, and I think that's the kind of culture that we actually need with men.
Okay.
How often do you have banter with your mates in the gym?
I do have. I think I'm an individual that is a bit more quiet at the gym. I don't necessarily have gym mates, or I don't have a gym buddy, so to say. The other thing that I can share with you is that when I did have a gym buddy, we were very competitive with one another. We were competitive enough to say that if I did 30, he would do 30. If I did 32, he would do 32. If I tried to do 40, he'd probably succeed at 40. And then we would playfully insult each other, but we wouldn't go to the degree or the extent to impulsively degrade each other in a certain way.
Because competitiveness, I like what you put there. It's more competitiveness than anything else, but
Right.
competitiveness also comes to upliftment.
I think that's a conversation we can have as another entry point, is like how men deal with competition, or how responsible men deal with competition. That's something we can really put into an episode. Maybe we might even do it in our second episode. What do you think, Shobi?
Yeah, I think competitiveness, and how it leads to upliftment.
Right. And I always say that in the world of gentlemen, or at least responsible men, everything was dealt with in competition, for example, right? So if you and a bunch of boys felt that you were better than them, and it turned out to be a game of cricket, rugby, or soccer, whoever won in that particular thing, within that particular sport or that engagement, resulted in the end of conflict. Same thing. Okay, this one was a bit more dangerous, but you do fencing, or you do sword fighting, or you do shooting in some way, shape, or form as a result of healthy competition to settle a conflict in some way.
Yeah, and I think that's also where we've gotten away from it, because now I would say something, and I know I'm an offensively offensive person,
right?
And I can sometimes, not meaning it, but most of the times deliberately, I will offend you.
Right.
I'll deliberately do it, not because I'm a jackass or an asshole, but also want to get the best out of you, and maybe being offensive is that way. But I feel that also when you can't handle weakness is a way of not handling criticism. Right? It's a very, very negative aspect, and it comes down to, again, certain upbringings. And it's not a feminine thing or a masculine thing. This is a mindset thing. And I mean, when we look at the term like gentleman, the biggest misconception that we have is meekness.
Meekness.
When you
okay.
meek, right? And at first, and I always look at this, obviously from my Christian background, I always look at it and say, when Jesus Christ was put before Pontius Pilate, he didn't say a word. He was quiet. And people took that quietness as weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when you're quiet and you don't say anything, like you said, it makes you dangerous, because you are taking stock of what happens. And a lot of the time in today's society, and I've seen it with a lot of feminine men, they always want to have the last say.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a masculine man, a real man, would turn around and say, and this is not physical aspects, this is just with the mindset now. He said, okay, I dropped the ball, the team lost. Or there was a chance for me to score the goal and I didn't.
Right.
And the coach has crapped on me, but he's crapped on me not because of anything, but there was a consequence to what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guilty, dead to rights. So what do I have to do? The following week, I don't have to prove it to my coach, I have to prove it to myself.
Mm-hmm. That
when I'm faced in that situation again, I'm not gonna squander the opportunity.
That you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, you learn from your mistakes.
That's what also makes a gentleman, or at least we touched on it on the critical aspect.
Yeah.
Is that if a gentleman or a responsible man is able to obtain or handle constructive criticism, he's not creating a scene about it, but is rather taking what is the issue and trying to be better. I think weak men in this essence is more so, a weak man is a man who would take the criticism and react to it in a certain way. For example, post something completely inappropriate on social media and therefore make it everybody else's problem, whereas a responsible man deals with it on his own.
Yeah, and I'll say a great example about a responsible man. This is a true story actually. So there was a CEO. Well, so he came in and he belittled a staff member.
Sure.
And the clerk was there. And the clerk went to the CEO of the company and said, "Sir, you will not belittle this individual. You can fire me on the spot, that's fine, but her job as a cleaner is just as important as yours as a CEO.
Right.
And
Right.
there's someone that doesn't have the title, but he's got the courage to go up and say to a CEO, listen, you're out of line. It's the same like I remember previous company I worked for. There were two gentlemen. One was an absolute gem to work with. Not because of how educated he was, but just the way he was, the way he responded and reacted to people. He was stern, he knew how to read the room, but most importantly, he treated everybody with respect.
Mm-hmm.
But now on the opposite end of the spectrum, there was a guy that I would report to who was a complete moron. Didn't want to take criticism, everything had to be his way. And was an insecure dictator.
Right.
Right. And I looked at it and I thought to myself, you know what, there's two types of individuals. That one is a strong individual, the other one is a weak one.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, what's happening is we are losing all the strong guys and we are getting to the weaker men. In the same way, like a player, we watch on TV, oh, that guy's got 6 chicks. My friend, that doesn't make you a strong man.
Well, that comes down to the thing that I say, woman, not woman.
Yeah.
Not multiple. I always say that a gentleman will always look after the one woman in his life, and if he has a daughter, that's the second. But I think we come down to the point where I think we have enough examples and enough, let's say, meat to try and create a definition. So here's my side of the definition. You can add on to it and see from there. So I say strong, confident, and dangerous men are ready for the unexpected.
Yeah.
They are respectful and therefore respected. They are traditional and therefore responsible. A man who keeps his words and promises is a respected and responsible man, and therefore is dangerous and confident. A man who provides, who shelters his own, who shows up, who makes the effort, who recovers from the time of darkness, who makes the world a bright space for his loved ones, even though he is in that dark space and knows that the dark space will hurt him, is a responsible, respected, confident, and dangerous man, and therefore a gentleman. And I feel that if you are a weak man in some way, shape, or form, do not try to challenge this man because he will rip you apart.
And I love how you put that there also with the confidence part, because I always looked at it as a gentleman, gentle and man, two different aspects. Mm-hmm. But it's put together, and that's how we get the word gentleman. But I always look at it as a disciplined man. So manners, first thing.
Okay.
Right. It's how you treat people, regardless of any status quo.
Mm-hmm.
If you're there, and that's the discipline part of it. The self-control part, and there's a good friend of mine, I'm not going to mention his name, Sila, but said that with self-control is knowing when to take the L.
Yes.
When you take the loss, you move on. Now, self-control is more about emotion than actual mindset. And as I mentioned earlier, whenever I go into prison, we have a talk that's called choices.
Mm-hmm.
Now, choices comes across as I remember when I did the talk, spoke about a response and a reaction. A reaction is always an emotional aspect. So you'll say something through to me, or when your favorite team is playing and they score, and there's jubilation, or when they concede, there's frustration. That is a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a normal thing to have. But what we need to do is we need to again take stock of the situation and then respond. Because respond is now when you've thought about it. Reaction is it's an impulse thing.
Right.
And one thing I've learned is, specifically with self-control, is yes, we often succumb to a lot of weaknesses. Food, porn, alcohol, drugs. We've all been there. None of us is perfect. But with keeping with the concept of being responsible, we've got the discipline aspect with manners, timekeeping, and your routine. The self-control comes in is whereby you need to also analyze, not do things with emotion.
Mm-hmm.
The self-control is controlling that emotion. A great example of it is I always believe that people think that when you suffer a loss that you shouldn't cry.
Right.
That's a sign of weakness. There's nothing wrong with a man shedding tears. My cousin summed it up best. Even cowboys cry. That shows a sign of strength because you're not afraid. Another thing is when a man needs help. That's a gentleman because you want to uplift yourself. You want to better yourself. You see someone that's doing quite well, go and ask them. Why not help them?
Right. I think that covers the definition and a lovely introduction today, Shady. Well, we have a bonus section in this podcast, or at least in this first episode. Hopefully, it might become a bit of a top notch. But we have a guest over here, a rather let's say a neutral individual who has been writing and has been questioning our modes and so forth. And then while we take a little bit of a break, I think he can gather himself, and then afterwards he can ask us the questions that he wants to ask. What do you think, Shady?
Yeah, I think so too.
I think he's a responsible man who's confident and dangerous enough to ask us questions.
Extremely responsible.
All right, we'll be back in 2.
So
and we are now back on our first episode on SWORM, or the Society of Responsible Men. And this is going to be a bit of a rapid fire round, a bit of a bonus round. We had a individual over here, a guest, that had been taking down notes and was very interested in what we had to say. And his name is Siler, and he's going to give us, he's going to ask questions, or he has a bit of a comment, one or two, to share with us. So, Siler, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, guys. It's wonderful to be here, I guess. It would be more of a comment, but it can be sort of a question, because you guys were talking about how men's roles are changing. But for me, from my perspective, it seems that that's not the case. It seems like men's roles are more static, and it's the female roles that are sort of changing, which is throwing the things out of balance. So, from your perspective, what is the male? What are the changes that you think are from the male roles, and from what to what?
I think what I can say in this case over here, men are changing on the grounds of they don't know what is right or wrong, what they don't know. If you're saying that females are moving the goalpost, men do not know where to go. It makes it difficult for a man to court. It makes it difficult for a man to have a conversation, let alone with the opposite sex. And in that case over there, it does affect a man's confidence to actually approach just for a basic conversation in that instance, which in turn creates doubt, and doubt reduces confidence.
Yeah, look, with the static part, I do agree with it. It's again where we got to look at yourselves in the mirror, and that's where I put it. Unfortunately, in the society that we live in, people paint each other with the same paintbrushes on the same canvas instead of painting on a new canvas and a new paintbrush. I did mention confidence. So I go up to a lady. She completely blows me off. She rejects me. And let's put it in context of cars now. So it's a Ford Figo. But then there's a SLK Mercedes in the same lot. And because I was rejected by the Ford, I don't want to shoot my shot with the Mercedes. The Mercedes, on the other hand, will be thinking, which is the woman now, why is this moron not approaching me? Is there something wrong with me? Right? Because I've decided as a man to paint that person with the same paintbrush. That's where we remain static. Instead of going onto a new canvas and saying, you know what, screw it, you don't want me, I'm going to keep firing shots. when mentioning taking the L, the staticness comes in when we take on one L and we don't move on. And we're like, it's going to be a repeat pattern.
I don't mean in a sense that we don't move on. What I mean is, it's regarding, for example, dating. The static role that I'm talking about is we as men are still required to do the approaching.
Well, that is a thing. That is a rule of man. We are supposed to do the approaching. We are supposed to be the ones that are rejected. But it comes back to the confidence part. Is the man continuously trying, or after the first rejection, he no longer wants to try? And I think most of the men in this day and age, in the 21st century, have stopped trying. Not because they don't want to try. It's because they are worried about whether or not they're going to go to jail for harassment in some way, shape, or form. We'll take the example. We'll take the example of I have a boyfriend. Now, a confident, responsible man, according to the definition that we laid out, would walk away from this woman. It's the woman who will change the goalpost and suddenly try to think about, like, okay, why is he still not shooting a shot, irrespective of my rejection? Whereas you tell a man, if you're saying he's static, you tell a man a spade is a spade, he will move on. And that's what makes a man confident in that aspect.
Because it's also, as you said, the boyfriend part. I think it's also taking it at face value. And that again, oh, why aren't you chasing me? Before, it used to be fun to chase because you knew there was fair banter involved. Now it's a thing of, you know what, I've got options somewhere else. I'm going to let you chase me, and then I'm going to stop. When courting today is not the same as it was when our parents were courting. Because there was competition, per se, but that person's eyes was only glued on that individual. Today's sense of it is, oh, a dip's got something, let me go and run after a dip's thing. It's always happened, but today's society has made it worse.
Okay.
And that's where the stagnance comes in, because if I'm going to see, again, if a chick comes in, oh, I've got a boyfriend, not interested, cool, move on. If you want to come to me and then say, listen, I didn't do that, then you've broken the trust already. If that makes any sense. If someone says, I'm not interested, face value, you move on. The next person, not interested, and you just continue to move on. Yes, you get tired from a shot, but remember, like Gary plays to say, that the more I play, the luckier I get.
Okay. No, I do understand that aspect of it. My whole point was just that male roles are kind of static, female roles are the ones that are shifting, like the goalpost.
Well, that's what makes us a responsible men. Our roles need to be static. Our roles need to be a particular thing. Our teachings may be different, but our discipline needs to remain the same. Our confidence may break, but it still needs to be there. It's not a matter of if I feel like it, I must do, irrespective.
Okay. Now, so that brings me to my next question, which would be the duties of males in societies. What do you think those duties would be?
Well, the duties should always be as it was traditionally, or as our God set us out to be from the beginning of time. Providers, protectors, and we are the ones in a field where we've gone wrong, is we need to elevate each other. A lot of the time, men don't elevate anymore. It's, let me keep the information to myself. I always use the founding fathers example. Those countries were built on mistakes, and I'm talking about countries that are run properly. Countries saw the mistakes of X amount of individuals. They said, okay, we've made this mistake. Let us move on from that mistake. We're going to make mistakes. Someone else will fix it. And that's how your generation grows. And that's the role of us, is to keep, hold each other accountable, but B, to elevate each other.
I think I would extend that in saying that a part of being a responsible man to society is giving back to society, giving to the community in a responsible, respectful way. That means in some way, shape or form being productive, in the sense, uphold the infrastructure that you build, irrespective of what type of infrastructure it may be. If you're providing a service, for example, as a man, you will uphold that service to the best quality that you can provide, and that it continues that way without it changing in any way, shape or form. Adaptability, sure, but its core is to provide and give back a stunning service as a man.
Okay, so I have a question about masculinity, because you guys mentioned toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. Yeah. So I'd just like to get an idea of what you guys think about that. Like, what is...
Well, basically, toxic masculinity is like, bitch, know your place, shut up. That's toxic.
Okay.
Because that's not a gentleman. That is not even a man. That is a bitch. Right? And I'm going to be blunt about it. Slapping your wife for not having the dinner done on time, that is now toxic, regardless of what it is. Any form of verbal or physical abuse, cheating on your wife, that's toxic. Belittling an individual, that's toxic. So that's toxic masculinity. You're not getting a message across. You're instilling fear, and people who fear you don't respect you. So it's an insecurity part of it when it comes to toxicity. If a man puts his foot down and says, listen, you're not going to go dressed like that. You're not going out dressed in a skimpy skirt, or, just revealing clothing. Because unfortunately, when women dress like that, they're asking to get raped. Hot take.
I think I would say that I think I would say toxic masculinity is requiring your woman to fulfill her roles, or her standardized roles as a woman, while you do not do the roles as a man. For example, even though you do provide a necessary amount of money, and it goes into the house and so forth, and you say, and let's say you provide but you don't protect, for example. So you come home, you sit down, you watch TV, you don't engage with your family and so forth, but then you have these certain expectancies from your wife. That I would say is considered toxic in a sense, but in the sense that it's not being done and it's being demanded of to being done, and yet you only fulfill one role. For example, you get paid a salary, the salary goes into the house and my duty is done. No, that's a very toxic way of thinking. It's a very inappropriate way. It's a very irresponsible way of thinking. Your responsibility as a man extends further than what goes into your paycheck and how you provide or how you maintain the house. If the saying is as such, a woman makes a house a home, then it is not a home if you are constantly criticizing the woman trying to make the house a home. That is a irresponsible man. And anything that falls within toxic masculinity falls in the sense that you are not a responsible man in the criteria that we've set out.
Okay, so basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, it would be the toxic element is just added to traits that could be exhibited by either male or female, but it's just skewed in this case to the male side, as in they're not fulfilling their roles and responsibilities but demanding that of others. So then by that definition and logic, it would mean that toxic femininity would be the same, just on the female side, i.e. demanding that the male fulfills his roles and she not fulfill hers.
Sure. If we have to understand the concept of feminism, we have to understand it in the sense that feminism was a movement to create equal rights in certain ways, right? In the 20, like the right to vote, the right to work, the right to drive, I don't know, the right to education, and so on and so forth. And I think that's one of the reasons why we also celebrate National Women's Day as well. It was a movement. Nowadays the movement has become skewed to a way to say that I am, from the way we look at it on social media, it's like I own my own body, I own my own money, I own all of these things. What do I need a man for? And I think that's a very inappropriate way of thinking. I would say that it doesn't, irrespective of whether you need a man or not, do not impose it on the entireness of society. If they want a man, that's fine, that's perfect for them. But don't create such an influence where you start noticing that real women start to feel doubt, and when they start to feel that doubt, they question the man that they're with, and then it ends up in a very abrupt termination of relationship. And then 5 years down the line or 2 years down the line, she realizes, okay, I made a mistake listening to the wrong society. Which would that be? The toxic feminist movement.
Because I'll also say another thing, if you're going to look at toxic femininity and you look at then masculinity, let's make an example of a CEO. Guy is 45, was he 50, not married, no kids. And he says, and like Adib said now, toxic femininity will say, I don't need a man. You don't ever hear a man saying, I don't need a woman. You hardly ever hear that, right? And that guy will sit back late in the evening, and you'll see on a Friday night, he'll see his intern there working. He'll come down and says, dude, why don't you go to your girlfriend, go out with your girlfriend, and make a night of it. You don't have to sit here till 2-3 o'clock in the morning. On the opposite end of the spectrum now, when there's a woman, she's got no kids, she's 45, she's living with her pets. She's bitter because of the fact that she pushed the man away. And where the bitterness will then seep through her is when she sees that young 22-year-old sitting in the office and the boyfriend is waiting outside. She's going to say, listen, you have to go and make sure that the assignments are done. So instead of uplifting, she's going to keep at that same level, because unfortunately you hate what you become. You become what you hate. Sorry, sir. So you become the thing you hate the most is what you become. And that's where the toxic femininity comes in. In the same way, if a child has been abused.
Yeah. Well, it's not necessarily a joke. It's like what you said, the thing you hate is what you become. And in that, it's like the thing you hate, which is a man, and you're becoming a man.
Yeah, no, look.
Well, there is,
in a sense, that's the truth.
There is a trend where you start to notice that are women in power becoming more like men, or are they trying to emulate certain versions of a man? So, like, here's the example: would be like, if you have a woman manager, is she more harsher, and is that what she believes a man is? Therefore he is harsh, therefore I am the manager, I must be harsh, that kind of thing? Or is it what are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to bring a new type of management style, in the sense to say that this is a bit more abrupt, and then you try to adjust it in a certain way?
Notice one thing when you look at countries, right? And there's a female, Angela Merkel was the Chancellor of Germany. The second in command was not a woman, was a man. Same like the President of Croatia. Second in command was a man. And notice when we talk about toxic femininity, too many women in one place, there's a lot of bitching and moaning.
Didn't a company shut down? I've heard of
Iceland.
There Where there was an all-female company and then it shut down.
Shut down. Why? Because with men, we'll sit back, and responsible men, not simps and bitches. Responsible men will sit there. The foreman will come in and will say, listen guys, this is what we need to get done. All those men are going to get together to go and build that project. Right? Now, there's no equal rights there. There's a goal in mind. And as responsible men, the goal should be there. Whether the goalpost is moved because of the climate or the economy, the goalpost still remains that you still got to score.
A project needs to be completed irrespective of what it can be delayed, yes, but there is a solution already in that case.
Oh, I think I'm done with the questions. I think those are the stuff that I had.
So,
Okay.
So thank you, Sila. But I'd just like to say, before we close, it made me think of my late father. And there are two common sayings that goes, for men. And I think this is again where, as much as people don't like Trump, but his direction of make America great again, and unfortunately the US is, I hate to use the word benchmark where everything goes in the world. But as we know, there's a saying that goes, hard time creates strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And unfortunately, in today's society, we fall in the latter. We are the weak men that create the hard times. Again, when you look at Franklin Roosevelt, when he became the president of the United States, I think it was Black Thursday, the Great Depression, what did he do? He went in, he said to the men, guys, we need to build the Hoover Dam. Unemployed actors were working. Then, bam, World War I happens. World War II happens. But America still progressed. We speak about founding fathers. And the leaders in all countries, especially the men, need to look at it with that mindset. Nayib Bukele has done a fantastic job at El Salvador. Take the ownership and say, guys, we have made mistakes from the previous regime or the previous set of government, in the same way as we as men have made mistakes. Let us uplift ourselves. Another thing is, in a way, if we look at it, when we make things great again, we have to continue to think that every time it's hard times. We shouldn't become accustomed to that everything is working and everything is in place. We need to continue to improve ourselves. The same like in the gym. You want to build that muscle. You want to increase that look, because there's an aesthetic about you. Same like when you read a book, you want to open up your mind. You want to open up you want to expand your horizons. That's what's supposed to be done. And the other thing is, there's a saying that when your father is the only man that wants to see you better than him. I actually disagree with that. I think that we as men should uplift everybody else. There's a reason why you have a football coach. There's a reason why you have a coach. There's a reason why you have a teacher. These people want you to be better than them, not equal to. So that's where we need to go as responsible men, as uplift each other. Even if you see that guy that's a bit offish. I'm not going to use the word fruity, but offish. Take him, put him under your wing. Groom that individual to change his mindset. Get the fat guy that is eating bad and let him come to the gym. We had an issue, remember, with the hike? With Ziggy, right? The friend of ours. We went on a 5-kilometer hike. We could have left at 2.5 kilometers. But what did Ziggy do? He pushed through, and this kid weighs 160 kilos.
I think in closing I can say that's what our podcast is all about,
Yes.
to make that change. So yes, I think off air we were talking about the fact that yes, a responsible man will definitely know what we are talking about. He might want to add a little bit more of what we may have missed. But yes, we are targeting those that are confused. We are targeting those that are, in conflict with their mindset, to say, you know what, I don't know what a man is anymore. I don't know what a man's supposed to do. At least we can give them a baseline, and at least as we have our topics and discussions going forward, we will be able to try and sculpt responsible men in society, or at least in the 21st century. With that being said, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for your time. We will be back again with episode 2, and let's see where this goes. Goodbye.